Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another podcast. This is Ryan and me, MJ. If you tuned in last week we spoke about Bible inerrancy, and we unpacked all of that.
Yeah, that was a big wake up call for a lot of people and still is to this day something I'm reeling from.
Right. Today's topic is interesting because today is about the sons of God. Who the freak are these guys, right?
Bet. Let's find out.
Let's find out. Let's throw in a quick intro for you guys and let's get this going.
Echoes of the Past podcast was such a fitting name, right? It touches on how we like to dig into past history, but also we're uncovering our own past of sorts.
Yeah, there are ideas that were off limits before because of my spiritual upbringing.
I believe you and I are going to have a great time delving into these topics without thoughts of punishment or retribution, which always held me back.
Yeah, Echoes of the Past will not only be our safe place for discovery, but hopefully our audience will be open-minded with us and join us on these new ideas. What do you think about the name we chose?
So do you remember when King David took a census of all the fighting men in the kingdom?
1 Corinthians 11:3 should be approached carefully, understanding its biblical context, its cultural background, and the principles of love.
Well, Yahweh murdered 70,000 people as punishment.
Literally is a matter of life and death, and it's important that everyone realizes the harm that shunning practices cause.
And we're going to use my book of Bible stories.
They don't believe in women in position of power. They don't even allow them to give speeches. They don't even allow them to pray.
There's been something I've wanted to share with you all. It's all about something I was indoctrinated to believe as a child.
You know, this music makes me want to just like grab like someone and just start slow dancing with them.
Yeah, that's why I was just kind of swaying in the breeze, imagining myself in a hammock, sitting on the beach, just sipping on a good drink. Okay,
Really?
don't know. Yeah, I had that whole vision come to me.
You know, speaking of
Prophetic.
hammock, speaking of hammock, I was at work yesterday. For you guys who don't know, I'm a coach bus driver, so I travel, and I parked in this parking lot with a bunch of buses, and this one guy I'm staring at, and he's literally in the air, laying down. Like, this dude is possessed. So I go around the bus to see what, look through thoroughly through the windshield. My man has a hammock hung from like each
Mhm.
end of the bus inside and just laying over the aisle. And I'm like, this guy knows what's up.
That's
So I'm
smart.
gonna start doing that. Thank you for reminding me of that.
I think that's a very good idea, especially because I've driven bus myself. And I know you have those layovers sometimes, and it
Yeah.
doesn't make sense to go back to the lot, park your bus, go home, and then there's just a lot of driving. So sometimes it makes
Mhm.
sense to stay put. Hey, take a little nap. Why not?
Hell yeah, man. Especially if we're gonna be there for hours at a time. And it was hot that day. Well, yesterday it was hot, and oh my gosh, couldn't take a nap, couldn't do anything. But anyway, today's not about me or Ryan. It's
Yeah.
about you guys and your brains because we're gonna pick them. We're gonna pick at them for a bit. It's about the
Yeah.
sons of God.
I like that. I want to pick at people's brains about this topic for sure. I
Who's
d-
in the chats?
had you even heard of
Hmm.
Sons of God until you left?
I didn't actually because all my life I was taught that anything that is not Jehovah is just a falling angel pretending to be God. So if I did hear that term, sons of God, is brand new to me coming out of the religion.
I have to say I never heard it, or at least I never paid attention to it until a few years ago when somebody brought it to my attention.
Mm.
And now I can't stop seeing it.
Yeah, like, and there's only one God that I understood as like this evil God, and it was Baal or Baal. That's
Mhm.
like literally the only God that I knew. God in quotation, like the only God that I knew. According to the Jehovah's Witnesses, was a bad. And who was it that like knocked that? Was that man? What's his name? That video they made of, is it Joshua? No, it's not. where they were basically saying that Baal was a bad god. If anybody in the comments can, is it Solomon? No, it's not Solomon. If anybody in the comments remember that movie or that movie, that
From the
video from
JWs?
the JWs, yeah,
Oh,
put it in the
darn.
comment section below. That was an
Yeah, let
interesting
us
video.
know.
Yeah, and I know it. It's in my head, and the name of the person is in my head, the protagonist, but like my brain right now is
Well, there were so
not
many.
working.
The prophets that were against him were Elijah, Elisha. I mean, all of those. Isaiah, Jeremiah. I mean, that was
Yeah.
all the early.
Hmm.
But as far as like the different kings, oh my gosh, they're like Josiah, Hezekiah did the reforms. There's half. It's always like this half. There's like this split line where half of them always went back to worship of multiple gods, and then supposedly some were always just with
Hmm.
Yahweh.
Yeah, and not to go into our topic right away because we do have this planned out, Mr. Wild Wall. Yes, this is true. This is kind of what we want to talk about also. Yes, as a witness, when I read the scripture and when many read the scripture, it's understood as angels coming down to see the women and see how beautiful they are and do away with them.
Yeah.
But there's a little more to that, and that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, 100%. That is exactly how it was portrayed to me, is that it was evil angels. They decided to come down. They relinquished their position in the heavens with Yahweh
Hmm.
because, we were just so hot to trot. They needed to get some of that. And so they did. They fell for it. They fell for us.
Yeah.
And they lost it all. They lost everything and even had some babies that became giants and supposedly
Nephilim.
had a taste for blood. Like they were just evil through and
Oh my
through.
gosh, these guys were like the original vampires.
Yeah. And then you come to find out, like, once you leave, it's a very similar story that we find with other cultures and their repositioning of the gods. This is, you have to tell a story to explain why certain gods aren't around
Hmm.
anymore or why one is more popular than another. And many cultures duplicated that same idea of them coming down
Yeah.
and getting it on.
Yeah, exactly, pretty much. I am so sorry, but I have to be right back. My wife just texted me. She lost her house keys, and I locked the door. So I will be
Oh
right
no, go
back.
go get
I'm
the
gonna
wife. That is
I'm
okay.
gonna
Go
open that
get the
door for her.
wife.
I'll be right back. Give me a second.
No problem. Why don't we talk about Genesis, since that's the one of the first times that we see it, until he gets back, and then we can kind of get back on track. But Genesis is that first story as a kid where I was like, wow, the gods actually came down and interacted with people, because Jehovah always seems to, Jehovah's Witnesses, Jehovah always seems so elusive. We say he's never been seen, but then yet supposedly Moses sees him. We don't know what he looks like. He's described as having a body, but yet in other scriptures, they completely take away those human characteristics and make him more out into the ether, something untouchable, not tangible. So God kind of changes. So when the sons of God, or the angels, as I thought they were, came down and interacted, I always kind of thought like, wow, I wish I lived back then. I wish the gods came and like wanted to talk to me. Is something wrong with me that I wanted to be one of the women the gods chose?
Oh my gosh, a little girl living her dreams. Oh my god, Mr. Handsome coming down for
Oh,
me,
you
to
chose
me,
me?
me of all people.
Oh my gosh, what's so special about me?
Oh my gosh. This is no different than the Abraham story where the everybody in Sodom like went up to the guys or the angels that were hiding in Lot's house like, "Come, we want to do away with them."
Yeah,
Freaking having gay
we
sex.
want we want to get to know you.
Man,
Basically, we want to humiliate you.
yeah, pretty much. So where we at? Because I stepped
Well,
out.
I just decided to explore Genesis a little bit, where the sons of God came down and just how I had
Mm-hmm.
imagined it when I was young, and continue to until adulthood, until recently, where I learned that when you read the scripture in a different language, in its original language, sometimes there's information that's mistranslated intentionally,
Right. Right.
like sons of God being translated as angels when sons of God has a completely different connotation.
Yeah, exactly. Um, there is also, I love that you came up with a PDF. I don't know, do you want to pull that out
Oh, sure.
for
Yes,
everyone?
absolutely, y'all. I
Ryan did
have
an
a.
amazing job with her research, way better than me. But we're gonna use her PDF documents as like an example of what we want to talk about today, and she has it laid out, with basically. So these are category not categories. These are groups of people, not people either. these are these are
But
the sons of God.
yeah, they're different like
So
titles or names of the same
yeah.
thing
So
exactly.
people think that these groups are all the same, but not necessarily. You have the divine assembly, the heavenly beings, the divine council, and the assembly of holy ones, which each group have their own role in the heavenly realm, so to speak. And we're gonna dive a little bit about that today. Um, oh, I'm over here scrolling, and I'm like, wait a minute, why is it not working? I
Are
forgot
you
you have the
able to
controls.
control it? Are you able to
Am I?
control it or no? I
No,
don't know.
no, I don't think I'm. But that's okay. Go ahead. You do your thing.
Well, what I thought would be important is to show where we have found indication of this title, of this name of sons of God. Because
Mm,
if you read in certain scriptures, it'll be obvious that that name has been changed to something, as we showed before, divine
mm,
assembly, divine council, assembly of the whole. And this is just some. There's
yeah.
more names that they use in, or like host. Is that one on there? No,
It,
but there's one something, a host of the heaven, host of
yeah.
heaven.
Yes, I know what you're referring to. Yeah.
Right. So these are all different groups in the heavenly skies that at one time worked together until, the Yahwehs needed to take over. But where do we find these names? That's what's more important. How far back into the past can we find this idea floating around? Well, the Qumran scrolls, I'm sure you've heard of them. Um, these were written somewhere around the 3rd century to the 1st century Common
Mm-hmm.
Era, and the sons of God appear in some of their literature.
Yep.
Here's another
And
picture of the just Qumran caves, just so you can see. Boy, that must have been difficult for them to like climb down, climb up, whatever they must have done to.
yeah, and with over time, tectonic plates take a role in the way things end up or how they end up, but nonetheless, like that is pretty interesting, like the caves of how they would hide the scrolls and stuff like that. Like this is where also the Dead Sea Scrolls came from.
Right. Yeah, exactly. These are all kind of the similar. What I hope to show you by the end
Mm-hmm.
is these were people needing, having a deep need to hide and protect information that was intentionally being erased.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I need us all to see it. They had something to protect, and some of the things they were protecting were sons of God, were El being differentiated from Yahweh. Why is that? When we're supposed to have this idea of, well, all the Jews like thought this one same way. At least that's kind of how the Bible and, theology and doctrine tries to put it to us, when that's really not the case. There was lots of different Yahwistic cults
Mm-hmm.
at any given time, and they were all kind of like fighting and contrasting. And
Yes, it was a freaking who's who has the longest what kind of deal.
it was a dethrowing contest.
Mm-hmm. That's basically what it really was. I mean, it was
Yeah,
just, and it had a lot to do with these sons of God basically unjustly ruling the earth, and El, which is the Most High God, was kind of upset about it. And I don't know if you want to dig into Psalms 82 a bit, or do you want to go with what you're going
We
with
can
now.
hold on, we can scroll down. I got the Psalms all
Okay.
also.
Basically, Psalms 82, if you
There we
haven't read that chapter, this is basically you get a mental picture of what's actually going on with the sons of God
go.
and El, Daddy El.
Daddy L,
Um,
baby. Who's your
it's
daddy?
it's basically where El assembles a meeting with them, with all the unjust gods to condemn them for their corruption. By the way, real quick, do you guys hear me? Am I too loud? Am I too low? I just
Oh
hope.
yeah, we wanted to test to
I
make
forgot
sure
to ask you guys that earlier. But that's essentially what's going on. And then towards the end of the chapter, in verse 8, we can see how the psalmist is speaking to this God, asking him to judge the earth. Now, why do I think that's important? Well, because you have to also understand that, well, first we have to understand why is the psalmist referring to this God, and why it's important to us, because the witnesses tend to think that this El is Jehovah or Yahweh, and that's where they're completely off. And there's certain scriptures that were kept from us, and if we go along with this PDF document, you'll see, like, we just saw Deuteronomy. If you want to head up a little bit,
scoot, 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 scoot.
in Deuteronomy, specifically chapter 32, it starts off with when the Most High, and this is where that title, Most High Elyon, was basically transitioned and fused in with the title that Yahweh was given. And that was because in Psalms 83:18, there's the we start to see the confusion, or the where it all messed up. And in Psalms 83:18, if you guys are not familiar with that, well, most witnesses are familiar with that. That's where it says where God, the Most High, is, the Most High over all the earth, and his name is Jehovah. That's where everything changed. And this all stems from Exodus, where Yahweh essentially was talking to Moses. And we all familiar with the burning bush. That's where Yahweh essentially spoke to Moses and basically said that my name was not revealed to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but it is now being revealed as I am who I am, or Yahweh.
Yeah. I think that one of the takeaways I hope from today also is with monotheism. Monotheism, the doctrine around monotheism is that it was birthed with Moses, right? In this environment where he was separated from everything else, right? They're out in the desert
Mm-hmm.
and they're in this place where they get hardened, right? Either you're going to make it, you're going to survive with your God, and you're going to come through to the end of it being stronger and even more consecrated to your God and dedicated to him with a covenant than ever, or you're going to probably just die.
Mm-hmm.
But they made it through, right? And they got to the promised land. So monotheism, in the eyes of most Christians and Jehovah's Witnesses alike, that's where monotheism was birthed. Yeah, there might have been some other gods in the previous patriarchs' lives, but we finally got it right here.
Mm-hmm.
And then we find out on the other side that is simply not the case. And throughout those scriptures, the literature that supposedly Moses had written, the Torah, is filled with other gods.
Yes, many.
You can't sift through it to try to take that ingredient out.
Mm-hmm.
It's too late. It's already in there.
Yeah, it's hidden for reasons.
Yeah.
There's, like we mentioned last week, that there are also goddesses, and
Yeah.
that was also hidden, and that's what we're here to do, to basically bring them back to resurface those gods or beings.
Like right here, this one, Deuteronomy, this is 4Q44, and it mentions where you had said before where God is angry and he's like, you gods are doing the wrong things, so
Mm-hmm.
now I've got to come up, I've got to be the one to do the right thing. And this is kind of proof he's going to venge all the other gods. So where other scriptures again will
Mm-hmm.
try to cover this up and maybe say enemies, or I don't even know what, I'd have to look at each individual translation, but they don't make it abundantly clear that God is talking to other gods. So he's
Yes.
acknowledging these aren't demons. He's not talking to demons. Why would that makes no sense? We should take it for exactly what it says.
Yeah,
These were very real to the people at that time.
exactly. Moving towards more of a history of, because there could be confusion on who. I mean, I'm kind of moving towards the L topic. I don't know if that's all right, or do you want to just continue with what you were going with?
No, go ahead. You
Okay.
we can come back to whatever
Okay.
while Paul
Okay.
is asking, but go ahead.
It's just because there's people in the comments section that are asking a couple questions.
Hmm.
Like Wild Wall right now is asking if Israel has any significance to L. And just to touch on that real quick, if in Genesis chapter 35, there is specifically, I don't know if, can I share this?
You should be able to.
Um, Genesis 35, you guys can see this, right?
You might have to make it a little bit bigger.
A little bit bigger.
A little bit bigger, please.
Okay. How do I make it bigger? Does that change things?
No, for me, I hit like Command plus, but I don't know if it's like the same for you or Shift
Oh, I
plus.
mean like yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, okay.
there you go.
Yeah, so specifically verses 6 and 7. Well, earlier we have uh the angel, L's angel, and referring to Exodus, who was speaking to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and telling them that they must build an altar. And in Genesis 35, specifically verses 6 and 7, it is this is where the God El reveals himself as the God, and Jacob goes and builds this altar, and he calls it El Bethel or El Bethel, which is the house of God, because verses 1 through 4, it's El telling Jacob to build this altar for the true God. And it's interesting because it's very blasphemous how the witnesses make Bethel all about Jehovah,
Hmm.
when that's where we try to really dig deep and figure this thing out, because Bethel really wasn't referring to Yahweh or Jehovah. And so, and referring back to Exodus, Exodus 6, verses 1 through 8, when we read it, this is Jehovah basically saying that at that time, referring to the time in Genesis when God was revealing himself to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, he literally says, I didn't make myself known to them with a name, but now this is my name. And that's where Jehovah and Yahweh basically was introduced. So when it comes to Israel, Israel is a nation that was given to Jehovah to manage by El. So
Hmm.
essentially, it is El's nation, but it's Jehovah who was assigned to it. So, and I'm not sure if you're referring to how the name was changed to Israel from Jacob to Israel. I don't know if that's what you're trying to refer to, but we're talking about the nation of Israel.
I think
Um,
it just means that like Israel is a theophoric name. So it's
mhm.
in the name that it's about
Yeah,
God El.
right.
Anything that has El in it, Michael, the archangel, these are all names that stem from the God El. Not yet,
Yes,
not Jehovah.
right. And if you guys want a more clarification on or proof that El isn't the same as Yahweh or Jehovah, we can go to Psalms 106 chapter verse 40, where it says that therefore the anger of the Lord, and we all know Lord in all caps is Jehovah, was kindled against his people, and he loathed his inheritance. So we all know what the word inheritance means. It means something that was given to you. So Jehovah again was a god, one of the sons of gods, who were given this nation by El. And I know I'm jumping the gun here, but when you go back to Psalms 82, you can see how El did this, and this is where it all stems from, that assembly, or that meeting that was happening in Psalms 82. I'm not sure if any of that is making sense to you guys. I know I'm going from here to there, and so is when Ryan's going from here to there. But that's just basically what I'm trying. I'm trying because this is her PDF, so I'm trying to go with my notes and trying to fuse it with her notes. So it's a little confusing for me. But that is essentially where El or Jehovah stems from, and El and Jehovah are completely different people.
Yeah, at one point, Yahweh, I like calling him Yahweh better than I like calling him Jehovah, and Yahweh might not even be his name. We don't even know that that's really like the original name, but it's what we have. But Yahweh at one time was subservient to El. He was just a
Hmm.
son, as the one scripture said. El was above. He divvied everybody out according to the sons of. And actually, if you don't mind, can I show that scripture? Is this one? Yeah. I'm going to share this tab instead.
Hmm.
If you all are interested, whenever you're looking up a scripture, to see the differentiation between translations, I suggest you go to a website like Bible Gateway, type in the exact scripture. For instance, this one is Deuteronomy 32, verse 8. It can only be one verse, but with that one verse, you can compare all the other translations. Okay. So when you compare this translation, some of them hide the fact that this was divvied out according to the sons of gods. They say number of Israel or something
Yeah.
like that. They'll try to hide the truth. So this is just a really smart little way to check out that every single Bible has the same thing. They should have something similar. But when the title completely changes like this, they're hiding something.
Yeah. I like how you put this together. The section of Elohim. I don't know if you want to put that real quick.
Yeah, let me put that back up.
Which is also something else, you guys. Elohim is a plural version of gods.
Yeah,
Um,
Elohim just means gods.
more than one. And El obviously is God. And
Wait, which one am I looking
yep,
for?
so go right back down.
Down more?
Yep, one, two more.
This way?
Yep, keep going.
This one?
Keep going. There you go. Yep, that one. Do you want to tackle that?
Yes,
Or do
so
okay.
this is some of the somebody mentioned that El goes back into like Samaria times. Yeah, El is one of the older gods, which is why it was very important for the Yahwehs to assimilate El. They needed that historical legitimacy, right? This is just typical. This is what they would do in these ancient times. So Elohim, there's many different titles, epithets that he carries that eventually got translated into Yahweh, like Father of Years, El Shaddai, El Elyon, El Olam, which means like El Olam, Father of Time, El Elyon, God Most High, El Shaddai. Shoot, what does Shaddai mean? Father of, I forget, mountains? Anyway,
Yeah, yeah.
um, Shaddai does mean mountain, so if I'm wrong, it's something
No,
similar.
it is. It is. Yeah.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
So on the bottom right here is a little slip of the Ugarit um, fall cycle. And in
Oh.
it, you see that El is called Father of Years. And again, these are other titles that Yahweh eventually took. But the reason that is when Yahweh, the Yahwehs, needed to control the narrative, when they need to combine authority. It's all about control and becoming the highest God. How do you become the highest God? How would you make yourself known as the more powerful God unless you carry his titles? Because when you hear that in the ancient world, Father of Years, you go, wait, what? Wait, what's
Hmm.
his name? He's Father of Years. This would elucidate something in your imagination. So it's very smart how they consolidated power. It's just unfortunate, in my opinion, that they completely erase these gods, and what memory is left behind, they turn them They weaponize them and turn them into demons instead of acknowledging the reason that Yahweh is the God he is because he evolved in that geopolitical, socio-economical climate with those gods. If
Right.
that makes any sense. Sorry, that was a long.
Yeah, it's interesting how Baal was, it says here, rider of the clouds, he who quells the sea. Yahweh is also considered a deity that controls the weather and controls many different aspects of earth in general. And it's why he was called the god of the mountain, because um, in that mountain is where you would get like Moses would go up to that mountain and fear, because God was using like thunders and the volcanic lava to explode, and that's what Yahweh was known for, was to manipulate earth and manipulate the sky. And a lot of these guys were fused into being that one being, and that's how you little by little start erasing all of these gods so that Yahweh can become that supreme God.
Right. The more that he takes on and assimilates other gods, epithets, etc., attributes, they become, it's almost like Tinkerbell. If you don't believe, they go away, right? So, and yes, you're 100%
Very
correct
true.
that Genesis is a God talking to multiple gods about saying, let us create man in our image. 100%. And also, you guys, just so you know, I did make a video about Shaddai. Shaddai also could be an epithet of Asherah, meaning of breast, because there was a blessing of breast and womb. And you also find that blessing in the Bible. And likely, as Yahweh assimilated powerful male gods, he also would have to assimilate Asherah's position as the creatress, as the fertility goddess, giver of life, right? So you find all these different attributes of other gods, Canaanite gods, that are now under control of Yahweh.
When you say Asherah, like there's a section here that you say that I've noticed you've used that term a lot. Yahweh and his Asherah, or by his Asherah.
Yeah. Oh,
Asherah was a goddess, but it was also used as a term to describe goddesses.
so Asherah is a goddess, and eventually her cult imagery, like the Asherah pole, came to be just
Yes, I remember that.
synonymous. So Asherah poles is basically like the goddess kind of went away, and all we were left with this pole, which was turned demonized into like an idol. When there has been evidence as such, this right here. This is at Telerad back in the 9th century, and you can see the two standing stones in the background, and in the foreground are the altars, and one's bigger, one's smaller as the standing stones, because one was for Yahweh, one was for Asherah, and on these altars they found cannabis.
What? Oh, what?
Yeah,
Awesome.
just FYI. So yes, Asherah was Yahweh's consort because she was El's consort. So you can't become the high God, the most powerful God, without your wife, without a wife, because they'd be like, nah, dog, that's not El. What are you talking about? Where's his wife?
Right.
Yeah, you got to bring your wife to the party. So
Exactly.
they would have also had to have her as a consort. Now, they only did it for like maybe 600 plus years. So not a super long time, but longer than the Bible wants to admit.
Yeah, it's all coming together to make a lot more sense. I know for me, this is all still new to me. I'm still fresh out of coming from Jehovah's Witnesses, so all this is like crazy to me. Obviously, it's not shocking, but
Right.
it's yeah. When I first heard you talk about Asherah, I was like, yeah, this there is way too much. It's why our first episode was, basically debunking how the Bible is inerrant, because not only was it corrupt, but it was also missing crucial, you know, um, information. regarding these sons of gods and goddesses. Now, when it refers to goddesses, there's more than one goddess, or is it
Oh
just
baby. Oh baby. Um
there's a
See, this is
lot?
why this is bad. There's so much like I'm like itching at my skin because there's so much I'm trying not to say. Um
Yeah,
First
because
let me
we
just throw it out there. Last week you brought up Adam and Eve, and I didn't want to mention it because it would have just taken us off topic. But
mhm.
Eve's epithet, mother of all living, is Asherah's epithet, mother of all living, which is why I try to get people to understand that the Garden of Eden story is just an allegory about the separation of us from the worship of Asherah, other gods, etc.
Mhm.
Um, but yes, so there's many other goddesses. So Asherah would have been the mother. There was Shepash. She is the sun goddess, which would be over. She would oversee justice, knowledge, mediation. There was the goddess Nikal Wa'ib. She is the moon goddess, called fruitful and bright because she was also like a fertility goddess of sorts because the moon is very secular with they kind of in tune with women's cycles, celebrations, fertility, etc. The Kotharat are female goddesses. There's like 7 of them, and they help people with becoming pregnant, giving birth, with pain. They bring medicines. And this is all in the Canaanite pantheon, y'all. This would have all been knowledge that those back in ancient times would have known about.
Yeah.
They would have heard these stories, especially since we see some of them are mentioned in the Bible. We know that they know about them. So anyway, there's many. Oh, I have to mention this one.
Mhm.
Anat. Anat
Yeah, I was
is
gonna say
the
not an arte or an or arts.
Anat, and then there's Astarte, who is
Astarte.
AKA Ishtar. So Astarte, or Athtart, is basically the Canaanite goddess equivalent to Ishtar, Inanna. But eventually, as these gods get reassigned, as the patriarchy kind of tries to erase and diminish the powerful female goddesses, I believe that a lot of the female goddesses kind of got put into one god,
Yahweh.
just like Yahweh. The same thing happened with the females, and Asherah. I think at some point kind of did go by the wayside, but she still was enveloped in Ishtar, Inanna. So while her name might not have been mentioned, she still existed in that goddess. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, that makes some sense.
Okay.
We have a topic or an episode regarding Asherah, don't we? And all the female
Oh yes,
goddesses.
yes, and I trust me, I have a whole. I probably have too much information there too.
This is amazing information, by the way.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad you like it. Let me see. Do I have? Oh, so just to show. So remember how people in the comments were mentioning the number 70, and the number 70 is all throughout the Bible. And
Yes.
that's not like, oh my God, every 70 means it's connected. And like, it's not a conspiracy theory. This just goes to show you that these themes, how congruent they were throughout history. The number 70, for whatever reason, meant something of utmost importance. And the 70 like tribes that are mentioned in the Bible, like, and the sons of God, are
Hmm.
also mentioned in ancient literature under Asherah. So Asherah was known to have these 70 sons. So they weren't just known as El's sons, they were also known as hers. So she was just as prominent at one time in the Israelites' history, until she was erased. But she was called the Holy One, which I also believe is an epithet that Yahweh has, that he absorbed of hers.
Yeah.
And then this was just some examples of the symbolism of 70, but y'all get that. That's
Yeah.
easy to understand.
Yeah. The Holy Ones is essentially just a group of them who basically worshipped God, and that goes to show a lot because Yahweh is the one who considers to be worshipped, but he was also one who worshipped. That's what the term Holy Ones basically means. It's like representing holiness and of these divine beings who basically dedicated themselves to this divine being as a service to them, or a service to him, service to El.
Yeah, all of these gods would have been subservient to Elohim. And y'all, El, the Bible, the Bible tries to erase El, and you wouldn't have known who he was unless you really searched. And now we're aware. But El, the God, he's never went away. He now exists in Allah. But you have to understand the people in Canaan knew who El was. Just because the Yahwehs thought El and Yahweh were the same God doesn't mean the rest of Canaan believed that to be the case. El was a very prominent deity until probably the 5th century Common Era and beyond, until finally, Christianity and eventually Muslim Islam did kind of take precedence. But those people who worshipped El, Allah would have been the same God. Like, do you understand? Like, that's just why people used these names, because it was familiar. Why they used the same epithets, because it would be familiar. This is smart. They did the same thing with Jesus. This is how you build yourself a good cult.
Yeah, it makes me. I've questioned if the sons of God were from El, and Jesus speaks about his Father, who is a heavenly being. Gets you wondering if Jesus is the son of El.
Yeah,
that would make him brother to all of these other gods, and that would also make Yahweh his brother. So that gets you. That
Sorry.
gets that stands your hairs up a little bit, because essentially, who is the devil then?
See, these are the conversations we have to have, y'all, because all this information was fed to us, and we just assumed that Jesus was the son of Yahweh. But now we're blowing open this hole of realization that the landscape of Canaan was far more diverse than what we were told. Archaeological finds have inscriptions, you name it. They have given us the information that we needed.
Yeah.
I do think there is a possibility that if there was this Jesus, if he existed, that he was not a worshiper of Yahweh. Just like the Qumran scrolls had differentiated between who El was and Yahweh was.
I mean,
Just like the Gnostics, if that's what you want to call them. I mean, they weren't really called the Gnostics, but that's what we call them today. These pre-Christian groups who come from Elohistic and Yahwistic thoughts.
sorry, this person. Moses probably came up with Yahweh when he asked Pharaoh to let his people go, and then Pharaoh said, "No way," and then Moses said, "Oh my gosh, this is by far the best comment ever."
Oh my God, that was so good.
Oh man.
Yahweh. He's like, no way. Yahweh.
Yahweh. um, damn, I was gonna say something.
You took our thoughts out of our brain. Thank you for that, Wild Wall.
Yes, yes. Damn, what was I gonna say? Oh, yes. I mean, going with what you were saying, how Jesus wasn't a Yahwist or a follower of Yahweh. I mean, it's obvious with how the Pharisees hated him so much. Because who was it that the Pharisees were worshiping? Because Jehovah's Witnesses love to say, oh, they worshipped Baal, they worshipped all these other gods. But then why did they follow the law? Why did they follow the Mosaic law? Where did the Mosaic law come from? Why were they so upset that he healed on the Sabbath? Why would they even care that he healed on the Sabbath if they didn't worship Yahweh? So
it doesn't make sense, right? They try to interject things to make excuses for why things the way they are, instead of doing what we're doing and trying to get at the heart of the matter. And the truth and reality is there was never this one idea of Yahweh. It will never happen. It can never happen. Human nature will never let any of this happen. There will never be one religion across the globe. Our
Hmm.
brains will not let that happen. We are too curious as human beings,
But
in my opinion.
there's a flaw in religion today though, because they all understand that God is only Yahweh. That Yahweh is only the God of all religion and the daddy. Hello, Dinah. Welcome.
Tanya.
I'm sorry I didn't get to say hi to a lot of people. Former to free. Hello. Compassionate apostate. Hello. I know I'm super late on all this. I apologize. Um, Dinah, welcome, and all those. I've never heard of Doc. Hello, Doc. I don't know if you've heard of Doc.
Yeah,
Um,
hi Doc. He's a regular on our morning shows on Apostate Coalition.
okay, Doc.
Most of
Devin,
the people are.
what's
They're
up, man?
awesome.
So, the best freaking name ever, Lieutenant Jedi.
I know, I
Um,
love that name.
yeah.
Bart Ehrman, I love Bart Ehrman, and I even still think that he's a bit, I don't know, I think he gives a little too much credit to, Jesus and those stories, but I
Yeah.
think that he's doing good work because he's changing a lot of people's minds. He's opening people's eyes to ideas that before were very foreign or wrong, but he's
Hmm.
backing everything up to the point where, like, how can he be wrong, really?
Right.
The
He's
evidence, it disproves that the Bible is this one continuous harmonious idea.
that's the biggest problem with everyone having a universal thought, a universal understanding, or universal
Inerrancy.
belief, is that once someone goes against it, it's they're looked at as the crazy one. We got to look at Marcionism that existed at one point. You
Right.
know, Marcion was also someone who believed that Yahweh and the God of the New Testament were two different gods, and therefore concluding that the God that everyone is worshiping is the wrong God. And Bart, I've seen a couple clips of his, but yes, he's helping a lot of people understand that God, that El and Yahweh are two different beings, two different deities. I think that's
Mhm.
wonderful because,
We need that. We need scholarship to push the envelope.
yeah, I mean, I'm just a person with opinion. I'll bring out some facts that I
Same.
understand. I mean, I've been quiet most of the time here because this is not my cup.
Forte.
Yeah, forte. Like Ryan knows more than me, but I understand the concept that Yahweh is not El, and it's just a huge amount of proof of this. Bart is someone, yeah. If you guys want to look into, he's
He has a regular
like he says, a
podcast.
respected scholar.
Yeah, and he has a regular podcast with Digital Hammurabi's. Oh gosh. Anyway, she hosts with him. Love it. It's really in depth. Like, you got to be like prepared to hear some information, but it's enlightening. It, if anybody wants me to just really quickly show you, because I mentioned before that the gods worked together and they fought against each other, but there were times, just as other ancient sagas where the gods worked together. Baal Hadad works side by side with a couple of gods who help him out to defeat Yam Nahor, the god of rivers. And Yahweh also uses the help of other Canaanite deities to also defeat Yam Nahor, who is the god of
Mm.
rivers and sea. And this harkens back to the Chios Kampf motif, where in order to be the high god, the god most high, you have to defeat chaos, which comes usually in the form of some kind of watery serpent dragon. So in Habakkuk, Yahweh comes down from his holy, like, he's like, ah, fuck, y'all making me come down here off my mountain. Fine, I'm gonna get off my throne, I'm gonna come down here and I'm gonna handle business. So he comes down, but before him, like in front of him marching, is Rasheph, the god of plagues, and Deber, the god of pestilence. These gods are written about in other ancient texts, so it's undeniable of who they mean. Now, eventually, these Hebrew words become synonymous with what they are. So, Rasheph just becomes synonymous with plague.
Mhm.
He's demythologized over time. So now that word does mean plague, but at one time it had a different connotation when this was written. And in verse 8, it says, this is the prophet speaking to Yahweh. Was your wrath against the rivers, O Lord? Was your anger against the sea? So in the English, you don't realize that
Yeah.
these are Canaanite gods, Nahar and Yam. It's so cool, y'all, when you realize this theme, this motif continues to be echoed throughout the Bible. Even Jesus in Revelation, when they are trying to elevate Jesus now, like in an apotheosis, he's becoming like more important than Yahweh. He is the one now fighting chaos in Revelation, the dragon, and is enthroned over the sea, because
Yeah.
this motif means something to human nature. For whatever reason, that's how it translates. Don't ask me why, but it's how it works.
I love that. I love how we taking out what the Greek really talks about, because the story can change completely. Like it's it's crazy. Like just deciphering how God in Genesis 1 means, just the very first freaking verse of the damn Bible. When you understand that Elohim was meant more than one God, that changes a lot of things too.
And that means that we were created, if you believe it, right? If you're taking it literal, that means that you were created in the eyes, in the vision of many different gods. So
Yes,
now,
yes,
no matter
yes.
how it is that you present to yourself to the world is acceptable because it's in the eyes of that God that was written about in Genesis.
Think about it. If God is represented, okay, God doesn't have is not it doesn't say God is just a male. I mean, he doesn't have any body parts. Well, he can. Well, he does actually, right? You mention?
Yeah, he does at one point have body parts. He's got a big wang.
So if God is presented as a male, where are all these females coming from? Where did the idea come from? It had to stem from some type of female god, right?
Hmm.
So therefore, look at it. Like it's the reason why cherubim represent the animals on Earth, because they're made in, because you know what I'm saying. You know what I'm trying to
Right,
say.
right, right. We as humans, what we try to do is we try to reflect what we see in nature up to the
Yeah,
heavens.
exactly.
So that's why I think it's rude and it's cultural erasure to erase people's god systems, because you are in a way erasing who they are as people, because as you learn and go through things as a society, you reflect that your religion changes. No matter what you think, religion continues to change. Like, I don't even want to hear that. It continues to change upon the environment. So when you just erase, you've you've I don't know, you've completely erased the tapestry, the beautiful ingredients that made that cake. You
Yeah.
just took important parts of it out and erased it. And that's sad to me. As much as I don't like some of Yahweh's bull crap, I think I would never just want to take the Bible off the face of the planet, because I don't think that's the right thing to do either.
Hmm. Yeah, and it also makes sense as why we're so imperfect. If the gods were seen as people who were corrupt, so are we. Like we're made in
Yeah,
their image, right? And so
right.
we're all
And
corrupt.
maybe that would make people feel better to know that originally for millions of years until just recently, honestly, monotheism is a recent invention, and in my opinion did not come about until probably somewhere in the common era. We continuously try to retroject it into history, and I believe it didn't come to be until the common era. And that is, again, just erasure of what society was going through and how they were trying to have these great big thoughts and question things.
Hmm.
Eh.
Yeah, a lot of people have been.
Should I move this out? I'm gonna take this off. We're
I
done with
was,
that, aren't we? Or are we
yeah.
still looking at that? Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna bring up how that scripture, that song that Deborah was singing, even she was confused by saying the God of Israel and referring it to Yahweh. Like a lot of people are confused and lost, and who knows? Maybe Moses did screw things up, like Waldwell was saying. Maybe it was his fault. But Yahweh is literally the reason
Yahweh.
why Yahweh exists. He is the reason why he exists. He's the one that screwed things up, and we have to acknowledge that. El. So El is different, you guys. El is the most high God. It's why even the demons, well, I know we don't like to use that word demons because a lot of, as we were mentioned earlier, it was misinterpreted, but a lot of these false gods and their influence recognize that Jesus was also the God of the Most High. Because if you are familiar with the Bible, there's an account where a demon named Legion was approaching Jesus and ready to strike Jesus until he realized, oh wait, this is Jesus, the Son of the Most High. Even they recognize that he is not Yahweh. I mean, the Son of Yahweh. He is the Son of the Most High, which is El. And I don't know. Have you heard of that story? Because that story, like, that shook
Yeah.
me.
But see, that's the issue, is that these writers would take those names and throw them in there in order to get some kind of elucidate some kind of idea, you know, oh, this is a theme. I've heard this theme before.
Mm.
But well and truly, I believe that there's a possibility that at that time, El was still a very prominent god, separate, and it took until sometime in the Common Era to finally erase his memory and turn him up and spit him into Yahweh.
Mm-hmm.
I totally disagree that that monotheistic idea came out of the exile, and then once they got back, everything was put together and they smoothed it all out, and there's this smooth transition.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the case, and I can prove that in so many different ways. I can prove that in Job, which we've already spoken about. Job, if you Google Job, it'll probably tell you that it's one of the older books in the Bible,
Mm-hmm.
and that is false. It's actually one of the later additions to the Hebrew Bible. Job was written sometime after the exile, but it's heavily under like Persian Hellenistic influence. And in that book, even though it's later, when all these sons of God are supposed to be erased and it's supposed to now be angels, it still mentions sons of God. So somewhere in the 3rd century, they still knew what this idea of a pantheon of gods were. So you just can't lie to me anymore. And I hope that eventually I can teach you guys all this stuff so you understand that that is a complete false narrative. It is a inverted history.
Right.
You're trying to paint a smooth picture of this Yahwistic belief that always was, when, again, archaeology and even the scriptures itself prove that he was combined. Like if I gave it to you in an allegory, like say there was a cake,
Yes, the cake.
and there's the flour and there's the eggs and there's the oil and there's the sugar and there's the salt, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But then you throw in dung.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know. Throw in poison, throw in whatever you want to.
Don't-
Now the cake might look good, but are you going to eat it? On the outside with the icing, you can smooth it over. You can make it
It's gonna look good. It's gonna look
good,
good.
right? But once you cut into it, once you start to parse apart these scriptures and look at them in their actual native language, you start to realize that there's some ingredients in there that you didn't know about, that you've been consuming and you had no idea. And you can't separate them. Once the cake is made, you can't separate Yahweh from those other gods. So you might be so peed off that Yahweh has assimilated other gods that you consider dung, but now he's in your cake, babes. I don't know how to tell you this.
You've been consuming it all your life. You just haven't realized it.
Yeah,
It all
sorry, that
tastes
was
the
a
same.
long analogy, but I hope it made sense.
That makes sense. I mean, as a parent, my kids tend to not like certain types of food. So what I do is I tell them it's all the same, so that they can eat it and consume it, and therefore they end up liking it. and it helps because with Yahweh, if Yahweh's in the Bible and everyone understands it, then everyone's gonna feed off of that cake, feed off of that same plate, and not realize the difference
Yeah.
because Yahweh is one who wants to be worshipped, you guys. He desires worship, but please, please remember and recognize that when Jesus was on earth, he says that he doesn't desire to be worshipped. He didn't come here to be worshipped. So if Yahweh wants to be worshipped and Jesus doesn't, then and Jesus says that the Father is greater than he is, why the hell is it that all of a sudden that makes them father and son when they're both completely different people with completely different desires? Like it doesn't add up, you guys. You guys have to stop eating that dong. Like just find find a different manufacturer, find a different bakery,
Yeah.
find like and then figure and taste it and then figure out which tastes better.
Taste
Like
test.
you know what I'm saying? I don't
Yeah.
know what I say sometimes. I'm an idiot. But
No, no, but it's basically just having your eyes open to what you're actually reading instead of what's there surface level, because surface level, they've put that icing over the scriptures to cover sons of God and turn it into assemblies. They've taken out Asherah, the name Asherah, and turned it into idols, right?
mhm,
Intentionally. They've written polemics, they've redacted information, and this is all just a way to cover up the fact that there was never this one true idea of Yahweh,
mhm.
despite the protests.
This is exactly what we were talking about. L was in everything. L was
Everything with L.
um,
Everything with L is L. It's just L.
it is just L.
It's just L. And yeah, okay, maybe like now, of course, because people might not have any clue to who L is, we'll just assume that's just another epithet of Yahweh. But once you break through that barrier and cut into that cake, don't take a bite. Do not take a bite.
No. Um, I'm going to in the description, you guys. I'm going to put in all the definitions of these groups, like the Divine Assembly, the Heavenly Beings, the Divine Council, the Assembly of Holy Ones. Because I know we didn't have time to discuss it. I'm gonna put in the description so you guys can look it up and read it for yourselves, um, and realize that just like we have the low tier, the mid tier, the top tier. We got presidency. We got, this is no different. This is a reflection of what's happening in the heavenly realm. It's the same exact thing. It's
Yep.
like it's the same way how Trump is trying to overthrow freaking Biden. It's the same bullshit that
And
Yahweh
those things
did.
happened back then.
Yes.
Same political, right? With like the Hezekiah reforms. And dude, was it Josiah who threw out Moses' staff with the snake? Nehushtan? It was one of the reformers. Moses would have beat
Uh,
that ass. Moses would have put a cap in that ass. But this
yes.
is just an example of how the Yahwistic cults would have fought one another. Moses would have said, "You threw away my what now? Uh-uh.
Hmm.
No, don't play. Don't play with my staff. The hell are you talking about? I didn't go through no desert for this."
Hmm. Makes you wonder, like the miracles that Yahweh performed. It wasn't just to save His people. It was just to prove to them
Yeah.
that He's a God, and it's just so that it's like His own alibi. Like He's trying to, He's caught in the lie. So let me just try to figure out how to make them believe. It wasn't just to save His people. Him saving His people was just to show face. Like it had nothing to do with actually saving His people, because what did He end up doing to the Israelites anyway? Started killing them one off little by little, shunned them in the wilderness for 40 years. This is someone that just is narcissistic. He's toxic, and this is why we have narcissistic people and we're toxic, because we were made in God's image, you guys.
Yeah, but I mean, think of how abusive that is to separate people out like that and purposely punish them and make them stay in a place that should have only taken them like a few days to get through. And stay out there for 40 years. Come on now.
40 freaking years, you guys. Like what?
What is that? What is it called when you start to side with your captor? It's a syndrome.
It's uh it I know it too.
I know. Oh God, now I feel stupid. I shouldn't have said it. But it's almost like that, like you've been held captive for 40 years. So of course you're gonna come out loving this God.
What the hell is the name? I know the name. It's like on the tip of my tongue.
Somebody in the comments better have
I know this. I know this from the freaking show.
Stockholm syndrome. Thank you, Doc.
Stockholm. Yes, yes, yes,
I love you forever now, Doc.
yes. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
that's the one. Okay. But oh boy, we've been on here a while this time. We were here for 1:05. This was supposed to be a 45-minute.
I know. It's every
There's so much
episode is gonna be
info.
like this. There's a lot of information. Every episode is gonna be like this. And which is why I said in the description I'm gonna put in my notes because I had a lot of notes as well, and I'm sure Ryan had even more. So it's you know, it is what it is. I mean,
And there's
that's
books here
why
too.
it's why a lot of it was also taken out because it's gonna be just too much to explain. And they're like, yeah, screw it. Yahweh's the God. Let's just do it. Print it. That's it.
Well, we'll be able to, like, some of this stuff we can probably dive in a little bit deeper, like with Ashra. We can go into,
Yeah.
that will be more information about Yahweh assimilating and, how people interacted with these gods and how they
Hmm.
worship them, similar festivals, etc. So we will have more time through the season to hopefully digest some more information. And of course, if you have questions, we might not have answers, but because we do both like to ask ourselves these questions now that we're starting to decompress and deconstruct, and I
Hmm.
want the answers. If I don't have the answer, there's a possibility that I want to know. So
Yeah.
ask away. Let us know in the comments or here in the chat or on the Discord, whatnot, and we'll do our best.
Yes. Real quick. There was when you had mentioned how Jesus didn't worship Yahweh, and we mentioned Bart. The difference between God and El, or sorry, El and Yahweh. There is one guy that I do follow, that helps with that um idea that Jesus didn't follow Yahweh, and it is Paul Wallace. I don't know if you guys know who that is.
No,
Paul Wallace. I'll just put up his thing real fast before we head out. Present share screen, and there it is. So Paul Wallace. This is a beautiful man with glasses who is bald. So this guy, if you guys want to watch his video, it's 36 minutes long, but he basically says everything that needs to be said for you guys to understand.
Oh
And a lot
yeah.
of his videos, and he's out there because I mean he talks about alien invasion, and he digs deep.
Can you put
Um,
that in the? You're putting that in the description.
I will put that in the
Yeah,
description.
would
Yes,
you, if you don't mind?
yes, I will do that. And then I also wanted to mention that last week we didn't get to do this, but I'll do it. We'll do it this week, this episode. Last week we didn't mention what we're going to talk about for the next episode, so I
Yeah.
figure we'll do that
Thank
this
you.
time
That's
around.
that's always
Yes.
good. So they might want to stay tuned. Yeah.
Right, yeah. Um, so next week's episode is going to be dissecting, or just to, basically, I'm gonna just pull it up
Oh
so
yeah, you
you
can pull
guys.
up the
Yeah, I can even pull it up.
pull it on up. Pull
Pull
up.
it up, she said.
Boop boop.
All right, so J Dub dissect decoding the lingo. We all know what that means, right? So if you are one who just left the organization and you want to know how to talk like a normal person, come to the show. And if you are never been a witness and you want to know how they talk, come to the show.
Yeah. If for some reason you feel like torturing yourself, and
Yes,
understanding what we went through as children, come on.
yes, yes.
But these, you all, I follow a lot of different people deconstructing from many different religions because I enjoy seeing how we're very similar but different.
Hmm.
Same tactics, but employed in a different manner.
Yeah, yeah, that's very true. I'm glad that you guys enjoyed it because Um, I appreciate, I tend to drift off and I say random stuff. So I appreciate that you guys have, love for us and tell us that we're having a good stream and stuff. But until next time, if you have anything else to say, Ryan.
No.
Okay.
I hope you all tune in for next week when we discuss the language, the weasel words that seep into our head and are hard to separate. Again, it's like those ingredients. Once they're all mixed, it's how are you supposed to pull them out and separate? Well, that's something we have to do now.
Yes, sirree, Bob.
Yes, sorry, Bob.
All right. Awesome, guys. Thank you very much for this awesome episode. Thank you, Ryan, for your amazing study and hard work.
You too, MJ. Thank you. You're amazing. Appreciate you.
Thank you. All right, guys. Take care, you guys. See you guys next week.
Bye. Echoes of the past.
Pass. Echo. I said pass. It should have been echoes. I'm so dumb. See you guys later.